Honorable Minister of Public Enterprises, the Honorable Pravin Gordhan, on the 31st September 2022. At that time already, the Honorable President of our nation, His Excellency President Matamela Cyril Ramaphosa, had already addressed the nation 90 days before on 25 July 2022. In that 25 July address, the President of our nation had already identified energy availability factor as the most key priority among 5 other key priority actions that will be formed under the watchful eye of the National Electricity Crisis Committee, NECOM in short, which he personally chairs and provides stewardship to. Upon taking our assignment, the board placed these priorities at the center of our onboarding journey. It is in this context that I wish to, at the onset, express deep gratitude to the President of our country, our Minister of Public Enterprises, and various ministers of state-owned state departments that are mission critical, and all key and committed participants, together with all their senior officials that form part of the NECOM and the National Joints Committee that is led by the Director General in the Office of the President, Me Pindi Baleni. Eskom is a systemic state-owned entity. Every action that we take has the strategic, economic, and socio-political impact on our country and society. We are grateful that through the leadership of the chairperson of the NECOM, we were able to navigate through robust, extensive, and comprehensive consultative engagements with leaders of various segments and formations that represent the views, fears, and aspirations of the people of our nation. In the past 112 days, the Eskom board has itself met several times. Often, so far, we've met almost 50 times in these 112 days. This is the total meetings between the board, the various committees that comprise the board. It is in this context that I'm also joined this morning by all the chairs of these committees, namely Dr. Claudel von Eck, who chairs the Human Capital Rewards and Remunerations Committee, Ms. Fatima Ghani, who chairs the Audit and Risk Committee, which has had to have a marathon of meetings themselves to produce the annual financial statements that had been delayed, that we publicly released in December 2022. I'm also joined by Ubabe Ubeginjalinjali, who chairs the ESG, the Environmental Sustainability Committee. I'm also joined by Me Trifosa Romano, who chairs the board's Investment and Finance Committee, which is tasked with ensuring that all these critical decisions that we have to juggle, which have financial statement impact, which have balance sheet impact, are constantly balanced out with our very constrained financial and liquidity challenges. I'm also joined by Dr. Mteto Nyanti, who chairs the newly established committee called the Board Operational Performance Committee, which consists of board members who have strong technical backgrounds and experience, also supported by colleagues who've got strong financial and commercial acumen. Through the Board Operations Performance Committee, which, as I indicated, out of the 50 meetings, just by itself has met 20 times to provide much needed oversight work that it conducted, working closely with the generations executives, general managers at power stations, ensuring that the board has a sense of deepening the understanding of the generation recovery plan, which the board finally approved on the 10th of December 2022. It has been stress tested and has been the subject of extensive engagement with the NECOM. In collaboration with the NECOM, we've had several stakeholder engagements to ensure alignment and a coherent plan. The planned performance recovery plan which is at the final stages of being approved by the shareholder, now that the board has approved it, will be driven vigorously and through an external project management company, which will independently ensure that we're able to constantly monitor and execute the recovery plan. And this is part of the different mechanisms we've put in place to ensure that, for the purposes of ensuring that henceforth we give credible information to the people of our country, that we have the benefits of this independent check and balances. However, the reality is that the recovery of the Eskom coal fleet, currently comprising 80% of our generation power mix, will not be achieved within a short term. It will take at least 2 years to ultimately reach the perfectly desirable energy availability factor. It must be stated that globally, the average power station energy utility company strives towards a global norm of 86% energy availability factor. We're moving from a low base, currently at 58%, to 70% in 2 years' time. The journey of the turnaround will see a stretch target energy availability factor being driven towards 60% EAF by 31 March 2023, which is a mere 10 weeks away from today. And then 65% by 31 March 2024, and 70% by 31 March 2025. The key levers to the success of the recovery of Eskom fleet is the fixing of the systematic issues that are troubling the organization, issues relating to leadership, issues relating to organizational culture, and poor internal controls that are required to lead this organization back to a semblance of where it used to be when it was once the Global Energy Utility Company of the Year in 2001. These efforts will be embedded as part of the recovery plan, but the recovery plan itself is part of a broader Eskom 2035 corporate strategy that the board is also currently finalizing. The recovery of generation performance will not happen within a short space of time. The execution of the recovery plan requires that power stations are given space and headroom to execute the recovery plan that requires either adding additional capacity to create space to do so, while ensuring that proper maintenance is done so without a constant drive that is reactive. We want to ensure that we create some predictability by implementing some level of permanent stage of between stage 2 and 3 load shedding for the next 2 years in order to give sufficient space for maintenance while giving the country a level of predictability or consistency to plan livelihoods better. Shuttling from one stage to another within a short space of time is not good for any business in any context within our communities. The teams at power stations are working hard to get better reliability and availability of power. The quick low-hanging fruits are the recovery of 6 power stations. These are, among others, Kendal, Matla, Majuba, Duba, Tutuka, and Kusile. These stations must be prioritized by deploying the best talent, sufficient capital, and the best OEM support in critical plants. The BOPC is supported by other committees, as I've indicated already, but the IFC, the Investment and Finance Committee, is critical in ensuring ongoing appropriate capital allocation. There's a consideration of capital fund to ensure that outage planning ensures smooth execution of managing the planned outage. The 3 units recovery at Kusile, equivalent to 2,160 megawatts, will ensure that we begin to stabilize to some extent. This is equivalent to 2 stages of load shedding. To be prioritized and managed as a project which will be led by an experienced senior manager who will ensure, as the board commands authority, together with the EXCO, is given all the resources to drive the restoration of these units within a shorter time frame. The current estimated return to service of its first is in the first quarter of 2024. We'll ensure that we drive the commissioning of Kusile Unit 5, which will add additional 720 megawatts by August 2023. By getting the 6 stations reliable, an additional unit at Kusile will stop load shedding within the period of 24 months, as we've already indicated. We also need to protect and guard the best performing power stations, such as Matimba, Medupi, Letabo, so that they do not deteriorate. Also, we'll be prioritizing in their context the allocation of capital expenditure funds, human resources, maintenance time to ensure continued good performance. We need to continue to realize that best outcomes come when people are committed and inspired to deliver results. And therefore, we need to incentivize the best performing stations, as well as the people that are there to continue with retaining critical skills, sustaining world-class performance at those power stations. Currently, there's no incentive in our organization for spurring on good performance. This will also be a vital turnaround as part of our turnaround plan to ensuring that we boost the morale and inculcate high performance culture in Eskom. We are fast approaching the centenary of Eskom, which is to occur this March 2023. This is testament to the rich history and resilience that this organization has, and by inference, the resilience of the nation that it serves. This confirms that the capacity challenges that Eskom is dealing with are not insurmountable. We do have the ability to fix the plant reliability and availability challenges. What is most important to note is that we need close collaboration and very clear alignment between ourselves as an organization and all our key stakeholders. The support required by Eskom from all South Africans is to use electricity sparingly. The Eskom's distribution division will be intensifying their focus in demand-side management efforts, and there are numerous interventions which are being explored, such as rooftop solar rollout, microgrid rollout program, which have already done some pilots in this regard, and energy conservation programs such as energy efficiency lighting. We need support with this and many other prospects that many South Africans from all walks of life continue to share with Eskom and government in a broad-based national effort required from all communities and citizens to be part of the solutions to this load-shedding challenge. Eskom is committed to improving Eskom's own performance. The Eskom strategy that I mentioned to earlier includes multiple focus beyond just the turning around of the generations division. The collaboration with our critical stakeholders will continue to be key along this journey and will be an ongoing effort towards success. The journey to acquire new leadership has commenced, and both the search for a new Chief Generations Officer as well as for the Group Chief Executive has commenced. Leadership is critical in dealing with these crises, and the board is driving this process as speedily as possible. I wish, on behalf of the board, to thank our Group Chief Executive, Mr. André Ruyter, for his commitment to continue seeing his remaining time in office through to the end of his committed time of 31 March 2023, in spite of the ultimate sacrifice that he almost had to suffer when an evil, treasonous criminal allegedly laced his coffee with cyanide, as has already been reported. The board takes this matter extremely seriously, in line with our duty as an employer. Various initiatives will be undertaken by the board while allowing the full might of the law to take its course. The support, as I've already mentioned, of various ministries, of the chair of the NECOM, and the broader presidency institution, and the alignment to this trajectory that we now find ourselves as a board is extremely encouraging, and we wish to thank all the key stakeholders across various levels of government for their ongoing support and alignment. Much more enablers from the regulatory and policy framework is required and being worked on by different ministries to enable the implementation of our Eskom strategy. The decision by NERSA on the 18.65% tariff increase, which was acknowledged by Eskom, will go a long way in solving the liquidity challenges Eskom is facing and correct the gap in the most cost-reflective tariff structure. We are fully cognizant of the impact that this increase will have on our customers in terms of affordability of electricity. The power system outlook for the next coming months is currently being looked at and will be finalized as soon as possible. Load shedding is an act of last resort, as we've said so many times, which is an act instituted by the system operator to protect the power system from a total blackout. Even though the country is experiencing higher stages of load shedding, the turnaround plan that we've already spoken to is geared at reducing the stages of load shedding. We are also mindful that the winter months are fast approaching, and in the winter months, there's generally high demand of our products and services, and this increases the probability of higher stages. Eskom will work harder to ensure that we don't get to much higher stages of load shedding. We wish to thank many of you for your tough criticism, and also wish to thank many of you for your goodwill, for your well wishes, and for your prayers. We fully comprehend that we are on a burning platform as Eskom and as South Africa. We fully appreciate that South Africans want us to work harder with greater urgency. And we assure you that we live alongside you. We are your neighbors. We are your fellow countrymen and women. And we are fully au fait with the grim socioeconomic realities that our country faces. And we wish to assure you that we are hard at work for you, our nation, South Africa. Thank you very much, and back to you, Sekonat.
Colleagues, I'm going to invite André Ruyter to please speak. And André, will you immediately hand over to Jan Oberholzer once you are done? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Sekonat. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much for your interest, as always, that you show in this very critical organization, Eskom, and the role that the electricity supply industry as a whole plays in the economy and well-being of our country. I would like to start off, first of all, by offering my sincere apology for load shedding and the huge and widespread disruption that this has caused to many parts of our economy, but also to the daily lives of all of our citizens. This is highly regrettable, and I can give the country the assurance that the Eskom team is hard at work in collaboration with the National Electricity Crisis Committee, as well as with our partners in various government departments, to address the issues that have led us to the current situation and to find sustainable solutions going forward. The first matter that is enjoying urgent attention is our energy availability factor. This has, during the past weeks, reached new lows, a lot of it attributable to the failure of 3 units at Kusile, as well as extremely high levels of planned maintenance that we have carried out. The acting Group Executive for Generation, Mr. Thomas Conradi, will give you more color on the exact details. But these are steps, particularly with planned maintenance, that are vital to restoring the integrity of our system, and therefore we do not wish to compromise on executing our program of planned maintenance. If we look at some of the key events, we had a gas air heater fire at Kusile Unit 5. Through the intervention of Jan Oberholzer with the contractor who is responsible for the construction of Unit 5, Mitsubishi Hitachi, we have been able to claw back the schedule, and that unit is intended to be synchronized to the grid by July of this year, adding a much needed 700 odd megawatt to the grid. Kusile 1, 2, and 3 will take between 8 and 12 months to return. Again, Thomas will give you color on that. Medupi 4 is scheduled to return to service in September of next year. And then Kuburg 1 where the outage to replace the steam generators is proceeding very well. We intend to have that unit back by the end of June and then have 2 units available for meeting the peak demand during winter, which will allow us to have additional capacity on the grid during July and August. After August, of course, Koeberg 2 will be taken offline for its outage to replace its steam generators, critical part of extending the life of the Koeberg nuclear plant. During the winter period, we will also be ramping down our planned maintenance. Now, this is not neglect. This is a very deliberate planned exercise. We have always, in our past, scheduled more maintenance during the summer months when demand is lower. And therefore, while demand will be constrained, we are taking appropriate steps to ensure that we can anticipate further peaks in demand. However, the capacity that is available from the Eskom system is likely to remain constrained, and supply is likely to remain tight for pretty much the whole of 2023. We are very pleased to confirm what the National Electricity Crisis Committee has reported, that there is already an estimated 9,200 megawatts of embedded generation projects in the pipeline, registered with NERSA in various stages of completion. When these projects are added to the grid, the first of these are intended to start feeding into the grid by the end of this year. We will see a meaningful difference being made to the supply situation. So these interventions that the President announced on the 25th of July last year do take time to bear fruit, but they are starting to bring much needed additional capacity to the grid. We're also, as the Chairman has indicated, looking at enabling the further enhanced rollout of rooftop solar. More color will be added in that regard during the coming weeks and months. But then a very important role can be played by demand management, and in particular during evening peaks. Thomas will share with you the outlook for load shedding for the coming week, and you will see a notable difference between load shedding for morning peaks and load shedding for evening peaks. In the mornings, we're looking at stage 1, and the evenings at stage 3. And this is due to higher demand. And we would really urge South Africans to, if it is at all possible, plan consumption such that particularly from 4 in the afternoon to 7:30 at night, that we have a reduced demand. If you can, switch off your air conditioners, only boil water that you need, don't fill the kettle up. These small steps, if they are carried out by 61 million South Africans on a collective basis, will really make a major difference, and we can start doing that straight away. So everybody's cooperation in this regard will be very much appreciated. We are looking at enhancing grid access. Grid access is clearly a key enabler to adding new generation capacity, and our transmission business is paying significant attention to that. From a distribution side, we have already significantly reduced, in fact, we've halved the response time of our grid access unit in response to applications for grid access. And we continue to look at ways to optimize our responses and make sure that Eskom can play its part in expediting the addition of new capacity to the grid. There are many questions asked on a regular basis if there is a possibility of stage 8 load shedding. As you will see from the outlook, that possibility is receding, which is comforting and is positive. However, there is, of course, always an inherent risk. And for that purpose, we have to protect our reserves, the diesel reserves at our open cycle gas turbines, as well as our pump storage reserves. And in this regard, I can give the country the assurance that our colleagues and our system operator are truly world-class. This is not a subjective view. We have had many visits over the past months from other utilities, other countries who have visited our system operator, and I can really confirm that our colleagues there are in full control of the system and do what is right to enable us to avoid a total blackout, first of all, but also to minimize the impact of load shedding. And my thanks go out to that highly professional team for the excellent job that they continue to do under some very difficult circumstances. Liquidity, this is my last point, remains a key issue, with municipal debt now approaching 57 billion rand. And we would really urge all consumers of electricity to pay for what you consume. If we don't receive payment for the electricity that we provide, of course, we are compromised from a position to carry out planned maintenance, to buy the feedstocks and the diesel that we need to keep the lights on. So paying your account really is an extremely important role that you as an individual can play in order to enable us to put load shedding behind us. With that, thank you very much again, and I will now hand over to Jan Oorolser, who will make a few introductory remarks before Thomas Conradi speaks. Jan, please.
Thank you, André, and good morning to all that is connected. Just a few aspects on the current situation. We currently have about 12.5% of our capacity that is on outage. And unfortunately, the unavailability is around about 14,500 megawatts. So it's giving us a total unavailability, includes, this is now the planned as well as unplanned, of about 42.7%, or make it about 20,500 megawatts. Now, as we're aware, currently we are implementing stage 2 load shedding, and we will implement stage 3 load shedding tonight until 5 o'clock on Monday morning. Now, looking a little bit back, 2 weeks ago, throughout that specific week, we had failures of 32 generating units, some more than once. Now, this unfortunately necessitated the escalation of load shedding to stages 5 and 6. Now, the power system, I must just caution, although we have recovered from where we've been 2 weeks and a week ago, the system unfortunately still remains extremely unpredictable, unreliable and volatile, as I've said, the experience has taught us over the last fortnight. Now, if we look a little bit in detail on what happened the last week. So on Monday, we returned 6 units to service. And unfortunately, 1 unit then tripped, but at least the net capacity that was added on Monday was more than 1,000 megawatts. And we then had to continue with stage 6 load shedding. Now, on Tuesday, we had 1 unit that tripped. However, 3 units returned to service, and that gave us a net increase of about 1,200 megawatts. And that enabled us then to go down to stages 4 and 5 load shedding. That was on Tuesday. Then on Wednesday, we had then breakdowns of an additional 3 units. 2 of these returned, as well as another unit. And so there was actually a 0 net. And this is why we remained on stages 4 and 6 for Wednesday. On Thursday, we unfortunately saw a deterioration with 4 units that tripped, some breakdowns, which removed about 1,800 megawatts, and only 3 units returned. So we had a net loss of 500 megawatts. And because of the assistance with our emergencies, we then continue to remain on stages 5 and 6. Now on Friday, 2 days ago, we had 2 major units that returned to service. And although 2 units tripped, there was a small little net gain, actually not so small, a good gain of 1,300. And that's why we then moved down to the stage 4, as we experienced it on Friday. Now, yesterday, we had 3 units that broke down and 1 unit that returned, although we had a net loss capacity, because we were able to reduce to stage 3 and 4, and mainly because we had some break in terms of the weekend demand. Now, this morning, a big unit, Medupi 5, returned to service, which obviously helped us quite a lot. Now, so in general, if we look at the week, we shut down and tripped 19 units, which is about 9,300 megawatts. While we managed to return 22 units. So 19 broke down, 22 returned, so 12,000 megawatts. So we had a net gain in capacity of about 2,700 megawatts. Now, as the GC has just reported, Unit 1 of Koeberg remains shut down on the maintenance outage. For the refueling replacement of the steam generator and normal maintenance. And I can confirm, as stated by the group executive also, that this outage is really well managed on an hourly basis, as a matter of fact. And we are currently on program. So to the colleagues down at Koeberg, so well done. Please keep it up. We've spoken about the 3 units at Kusile, the broken down ones. We spoke about Kusile 5, the gas heater. Then the Medupi 4 unit, as well as the Koeberg unit, the 4,500 megawatts, that is really making it extremely tight where we find ourselves. So, and as stated, so for a year, units 1, 2, and 3 will be offline. That's 2,000 megawatts. The gas heater in K5, we trust that will return to service, that we can synchronize it to the system towards the later part of this calendar year. Although there's a difference between first synchronization and then commercial operation, because after we synchronize it to the grid, we still have to do capability and commissioning tests. So we believe that unit will be in place in commercial operation early in 2024, the calendar year. However, it will be able to generate electrons being synchronized during certain periods on the grid. And we have spoken about Koeberg. So the 4,500 is really making it challenging for ourselves, because that represents basically 5 stages of load shedding. But I can give the assurance as well that all these that I've just spoken about, the 4 units at Kusile, Medupi, as well as Koeberg, is managed on a project basis. So there's real dedicated attention and focus. So if we then look at the week ahead, and as the GC has said, Thomas will give us a bit more of the detail. We are on track to completely replenish the pump storage dam levels, specifically at Ingula and Palmit, while we have some challenges at Drakensberg, and the reason being that 2 of the 4 units or the pumps are out of service for planned maintenance. So those units will return in time to come. So by when you have the capacity available or time available to pump the lower dam, the water up to the upper dam, we only have the 2 units available. So there is a challenge. We have procured an additional 50 million, or a little bit more than 50 million litres of diesel. That approval was given on the 6th of January. However, this will be used, as and when required, and to make sure that we manage, the pump storage dam levels, and obviously to make sure that we reduce the stages of load shedding during the day. Now, you may recall that the pump storage and OCGT generators contribute nearly 6,000 megawatts, 5,700 megawatts to be precise, of emergency generation capacity to the system. Without fuel to these resources, an additional 6 stages of load shedding would be required. So if you take the open cycle gas turbines of Eskom alone, if those emergencies are not available, the diesel, those are 2 stages of load shedding. Now, tomorrow, Monday morning, we will then, as André said, stage 3 load shedding from 5 o'clock tomorrow morning till 4 o'clock, which will be followed then by the stage 4 load shedding from 4 to 5 in the morning. So this is a current outlook. So things may change, but this is the outlook as we have it now. So I need to state that while there has been some improvement in the available generation capacity, allowing us to drop the stages of load shedding, we've also seen an increase in demand for electricity as industry and businesses try to catch up on lost production. So this, combined with the, as I already mentioned, the unpredictability and unreliability of the generation fleet, makes planning quite difficult. And this may result in changes to load shedding at short notice in the week to come. So the current outlook shows that stage 2 and stage 3 load shedding may be possible during this week. So during the summer, plant maintenance programs continue, and is currently as we speak, there are 13 units out in service for maintenance purposes. Now, during the year-end break, over 8,000 megawatts of plant maintenance was performed. And this will, as André said, be reduced to 1,000 megawatts during the peak for the reasons that he has been given. We are quite proud and pleased to state that the running units at Medupi Power Station are performing very well and operating at full output of 720 megawatts. Similarly, Kusile 4, unfortunately, the only unit at Kusile, is also operating at full output of 720 megawatts. Now, just lastly, to talk about load shedding, this is carried out in accordance, with the NSRS 048-9 standard, which was developed by the power industry in South Africa, including Eskom. Now, this is a very dynamic, controlled method of reducing the demand on the power system when there are unfortunately capacity constraints. Now, the standard does cater for up to stage 8 load shedding, which will be carried out in accordance to predefined schedules. Now, stage 8 load shedding is not anticipated, and I want to confirm that, as the group executive has said, to be implemented, but would allow for an orderly reduction in electricity demand should an unforeseen event occur. Now, although the stages of load shedding have been high for extended periods, this does not indicate that the power system is approaching a blackout. And it's important to understand it. So in fact, as long as we are in load shedding to ensure the appropriate reserves are maintained, there is no risk of any higher load shedding at this point in time. And we will then operate the system as normal. I'd like to end my brief here, and then I'd like to invite then Thomas Conradi. Now, Thomas is currently acting as the head of generation to provide an update on the generation recovery plan and perhaps a little bit of a detail more on the outlook. So thank you so much for your time. Thomas, over to you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chair, and good morning to all the participants to this meeting. Seeing that there's been in detail being indicated by Jan and to a lesser degree by André in terms of the current status, I will be brief in terms of those slides. Just to indicate then, in terms of the system status currently, it's indicated the planned outage is sitting just about at 6,000 megawatts. Our total unplanned unavailability is still at 14,372. And this was now a snapshot that we took early this morning, which is significantly higher than our planning basis of 13,000 megawatts. And that then necessitates the stage 2 load shedding and then stage 3 later this afternoon, also with the stages in the coming week. Just to give then an overview on it, we have seen that we've had significant plant unreliability, and the contribution mainly coming also from and been added by the Kusile 1, 2, and 3 units, and then also other capacity that is not available currently in terms of Medupi 4, Koeberg 1 that's on outage, and then also Kusile 5 delayed commissioning. 4 generating units are planned to be returned still today, and that will continue, and also some units for later into this week. We have run some OCGTs last night during the peak. As it stands currently, we're not anticipating to be running any of the OCGTs tonight. It must also be noted that we're experiencing fairly high partial load losses currently at Matimba Power Station as a result of the high ambient temperatures that we then incur vacuum losses. This is not uncommon for Matimba Power Station, knowing that there are inherent issues with the original design of Matimba and being affected by the wind and very high ambient conditions at Matimba, sorry. Outage slips have reduced, so that is encouraging, but still we've got just below 1,000 megawatts that's on outage slip, and that keeps on to be a main focus for us to further reduce outage slips. So as indicated, and just to also sum up in terms of what Mr. Ober also mentioned, we will then have still tonight stage 3 load shedding, tomorrow night to stage 4, and then if all go to plan, we will be having lower stages of load shedding during daytime, but for the evening peak, we still need to incur stages 3 load shedding. We closely monitor our reserve capacity, and as can be seen on the slide also, we've had the pumping hours as we need to recover that over weekends, and also with a lower demand, especially during nighttime, we're pumping in order to protect our reserves. So in terms of the generation recovery plan, and as indicated, our EAF is very poor and certainly unacceptable at below 60%, where we currently stand. Our efforts is really focusing on addressing all the major areas in terms of people, plant, and process. And there are some essential levers that we also giving attention to in order to make sure that our improvements will be sustainable. I've mentioned about the incidents at Kusile, and that is really been adding a lot of unavailability and capacity loss for us, and giving us less room also to maintain, and also adding to the load shedding that we're currently experiencing. So our operational plan that's been developed, and also as the chair indicated, we have worked very closely with the board and with other with other parties in terms of making sure that this plan of us is robust. And the intention with that is to improve our EAF from the current 58% to 65% by the end of financial year 24, and then aiming towards 70% by end of 25. Already within this financial year, which end of March, we anticipate to recover 1,862 megawatts, and then in total over 6,000, in order of 6,000 megawatts into the next 24 months. Our main efforts have been the top 6 stations, although the plan is covering all the coal-fired plants. We've got 6 stations that we are specifically focusing on, where we believe that there's the greatest opportunity to harvest and get more megawatts available and lift the energy availability factor of those specific stations. We require additional funding also for our outage execution, and we are in close deliberation also with the board and with the investment committees on that. There are a number of demand side management initiatives that was also alluded to earlier, which is also in support of providing more headroom and more capacity available for executing maintenance. So just to give it in this form. We can see here on the left-hand side where we find ourselves currently. We believe that we've got a robust plan now. We certainly will ensure that we protect our good performing stations, to also give then the specific attention to the top 6 stations, the return of Duva 2, the execution of Kubek 1, and then indicated we've also appointed the independent engineering supplier to oversee in terms of the work being executed in this turnaround plan. And then as we bring more capacity on load, also to give specific attention to Kiel and Arnold in the financial year coming, to then excel towards 65% and ultimately 70% by financial year 25. So just to then our plan is very much in detail in terms of the specific units that we intend to do work on in this coming months and the year, and also where we anticipate to recover which megawatts on each of these units. And for the first 6 months, we're aiming to get the 1,862. We've been already working on this since the last year, having got outages on units and then also specific initiatives at these stations to recover these specific megawatts. And we will closely monitor this, and also in conjunction with the independent service provider to track all these actions. Then also the adding of the 2 commissioning units, 5 and 6, and then Medupi 4 that we will bring back once that repairs work has been done on the generator. Our plan can focus on 10 specific focus areas, and it's a busy slide. I will not go into all the detail, but just to indicate that we focus on plant condition and how we can get some capacity unlocked in order to execute the work. Very much our people aspect, the skill and experience, appointment of our plant managers, also to draw upon external expertise, and to ensure that we provide the necessary training and development for our staff to be able to operate and maintain our plants best. As mentioned, also to look at how we can also motivate people, how we can get people to be really driving with vengeance this recovery plan. Crowdsourcing, where we make use of also a well set out list of resources being available to deal with specific shortcomings in our area. Fraud and corruption still of a problem, and yes, we're giving that also attention. We're working closely through one of the NECOM work streams also to address that at the stations. I can also mention that in terms of on the new build defect side, we've made good progress, and we're certainly reaping the benefits of that at Medupi. Quite a bit of work still to be done at Kusile Power Station, and this is ongoing work where we further refine some of the design deficiencies that we have picked up in terms of the new build. Just in conclusion, in terms of the recovery plan, generation remains acutely aware of how our poor current performance is really impacting the country, and has got the main event in terms of triggering load shedding in the country. And we working tirelessly and with great urgency also to address this, to get our EAF in a much better situation. We are committed to also stop the load shedding through not only adding this EAF through this initiative, but also through additional generating capacity that is urgently required. And as indicated, we aim to recover in the order of 6,000 megawatts towards in the next 24 months, with also urgency in terms of in the immediate few months to add that capacity. I think we clearly understand also our recovery plan is very highly dependent on both internal and external factors. For us to really get to a point of having operational excellence in our business again, that we've got adequate capacity available and skills, that we really get rid of any fraud and corruption within our business. Some policies and procedures that we are working closely also with some of the departments to ease up and improve our processes within the power station. And it's critical that these external and internal factors are also resolved for us to really get a sustainable performance improvement. I want to then just use a few slides quickly on the Kusile 1, 2, and 3 duct failure, a very unfortunate incident that we've experienced on the 23rd of October, when we've had the flue duct that collapsed on Unit 1 and also compromising that of Unit 2 and 3. And it was mainly as a result of excessive weight that occurred onto this ducting when there was some slurry build-up in a flue gas duct. And in the process then overloaded the support structure, causing it to collapse. This unavailability is 2,160 megawatts, which it's all carried currently as unplanned unavailability, and part of that base of the 14,000 that I alluded to earlier. We're working closely with OEM, and we're in the process now of also designing, and will then continue with the construction there of temporary flues for units 1, 2, and 3 to see how we quickest can get this 3 units back in service, whilst we then look at the way to best repair and correct the permanent stack. There might be a need for us to also seek for exemption with DFF in order to operate this in bypassing the FGD. So just a diagram, if you use a top view, so this is from the top where the smokestack, and you can see the 3 ducts going in for the 3 units into the common flue. These are the tall chimneys, concrete chimneys that one do see at the power stations. So there's one for the 3 units. So one could see here where the failure was on the unit 1, just to give a sense of size. One can see the platform there, and this duct in the order of 8.9 meter diameter. So it's a huge structure and 50 meters up. So in failing of this duct, one could see then it also compromised the other 2 ducts inside the common flue. This is just on unit 2 and 3, similar subsidence that we've already seen on those ducts, although they didn't fully collapse like the unit 1. Inside the stack, this is where the support structure failed, and as a result of the overloading causing this unit 1 duct to come dislodged from the rest of the flue. And there one can see some of the damage on the ducting, significant damage. Also where it's bumped against the units 2 and 3 bends, and by that also compromising them. Chair, there's just a few indications of the Kusile incident, and let me leave it there. Thank you very much. I hand back to you, Sekunati.
Thank you, Thomas, and thank you to all the colleagues that have spoken. I will now go on to the questions, colleagues. I have tried to group them to the extent that I can, and we will take questions first directed at the board. Mr. Makwana and his colleagues on the board will assist with those. Can I please ask all the colleagues to write down their questions instead of raising hands? We are not able to take your voice. Please write them all on the chat. So I will start with questions for Mr. Makwana, and I'll take 3 at this point, and allow the board to respond to those, and we will then go to those that are directed at the management team. So the first question, Mr. Makwana, comes from Totulu of the SABC. He says, may we please have more information from the board on the principles underpinning the recruitment strategy for new Eskom members? How broad is the search, and will it be completed by 31 March? Is there a provision in the recruitment strategy to involve strategic Eskom stakeholders? Mr. Magwana, here, I think the deadline to 31 March refers to the departing chief executive. Will you be in time to replace him? And if not, what will the process be? Mariam Isa of EE Business Intelligence wants to know, can you tell us the project management company you have hired to drive Eskom's recovery plan, the duration of the contract, and what you are paying them for? Chris Yeland has got quite a long question for you, Mr. Magwana, and I'm trying to get to it. There you go. He says, Mr. Magwana, I asked you this question at the last media briefing and you deferred from providing an answer. May I therefore ask you again, after 110 days in office, are you of the view that the Eskom CEO and his team at Eskom have been actively working for the overthrow of the state by embarking on extended load shedding? Do you consider that South Africa has about 20,000 megawatts of generation capacity that is idling, as indicated publicly by the Minister of Minerals and Energy? Please, will you answer those, sir?
Thank you very much, Sikonati. Let me prioritize for myself to answer the two questions, one from Mtokulu and the one from Mr. Chris Yeland. And if I may ask Dr. Mtetonyati to speak to the project management company question. Firstly, let me, Chris, speak to the point you raise. I honestly think that the question of whether the Eskom management, the Eskom board, is actively involved in an attempt to overthrow the state should really, in my humble opinion, be deemed as a redundant question. I have articulated here this morning that we have been working extensively in consultation with the chair of the National Electricity Crisis Committee, which is the president of our republic. That committee comprises of various key ministries, including the Ministry of DMRE. And I have said here that we have had extensive engagements. We enjoy the full support of the NECOM. Eskom is a state-owned entity. There's only one national utility in South Africa that supplies energy to the Republic of South Africa under the auspices of being a state-owned entity. To the extent that the leaders of this country and the head of state of this country felt that the board of Eskom and the management at Eskom were actively involved in an attempt to undermine the state or overthrow it, it should be painfully clear that that head of state and the government that he leads, who are the shareholder in Eskom, would have long time ago terminated the services of this board and the executive committee. So I hope that this response will now, once and for all, put this question to bed. I think we should at this point be focusing on much more important matters of constantly looking for outside-in solutions from outside the country, from within the country, inside in, for solutions that will help us to find various modalities and various options that we can put at our disposal, both as Eskom and as the country, to add more megawatts onto the grid and to work together collectively towards the systematic eradication of load shedding. Let me then point further to the question you've referred to me, raised by Mr. Mtokulu. We have to run a search process in full compliance with the requirements that govern our Public Finance Management Act, so that we ensure that at no stage do we come back and announce a group chief executive and find that the process may be questionable or found wanting in some form or shape. So it must be a process that is run comprehensively and is run beyond reproach. We have embarked on such a process. We have now approved a service provider that is going to ensure that that process is run both in line with those standards and also comprehensively in line with global best practice of searching for an executive. And so we will do our best, as we've demonstrated in the last 110 days, that we are not a passive board. We are actively involved in the oversight and actively involved in supporting our executive colleagues in the turnaround process of this valuable utility. And we will therefore ensure that even with this search for the GCE, come 31 March, in the next few weeks, we would have gone as far as possible towards, at best, if we don't have a warm body, that will at least have a name that would have arrived at, and the board would hopefully at that time then have concluded as much of the search as possible. This is a process that we will be watching very closely, and where appropriate, we will also be sharing communication where we deem it necessary to do so or appropriate to do so. If I can now then invite Dr. Mteto Nyati to please address the question that has been raised by, I think it's Mariam Issa, on the matter of the project management company. Over to you, sir.
Thank you so much, Chair. As the Chair has indicated from the get-go, he indicated to us that as a board that we are going to be an engaged board. We chose to have this approach because we felt that we are in a state of crisis. We needed to be embedded and engaged and have deep understanding of what the issues are within Eskom. And we have done exactly that. We now have a plan, a generation recovery plan that has been approved by the board. It has been approved by the shareholder. And this plan, in coming up with it, it is a management plan, but it has been challenged, it's been questioned. We have added to it as the board. It's reflecting Eskom, but it is a management plan. So one of the recommendations that were made to the executive or to management of Eskom, based on our engagement with the different stakeholders within Eskom, we felt that we needed to have an independent entity that is going to help with the monitoring, stress testing of this recovery plan, and also helping with the reporting. We feel that going forward, the people of South Africa need to know at any given moment in time, accurately to know where we are. And this is the reason why we made this recommendation to management. And they indeed took the suggestion and felt that they needed to go and look for an independent entity to do this. Having run a process, they came and informed us that the company that they have been able to identify is a local subsidiary of a global company. Its name is WSP Africa, and the global company's name is WSP. It's an engineering firm that is really specializing in project and complex project management. So that is the name of the company. The duration of this contract, I'm told that it is 12 months. And one of the things that are going to be helping us with as well is to continue to help us to rebuild the capability of managing complex projects within Eskom. Over to you, Ngosinati.
Sekonati.
If I can deal with the assistance of my colleagues with the questions raised by, sorry, Sekonati, there you are. I usurped your role.
I apologize, colleagues. Thank you, André. I've been struggling with the mute button. Thank you for holding the fort here. The next set of questions is again for the board. Mtotulu, your question about whether the shareholder has approved the generation recovery plan has already been answered by Mteto Nyati at this point. So I'll go on to the next question. Given the multi-year EAF forecast, has the shareholder expressed its opinion on how this will affect the country's economic strategy and the work of the cabinet economic cluster and other economic recovery initiatives? That's again a question for the board. There is a question again, Mr. Makwana, on whether Eskom has dealt or has been in touch with National Treasury with regards to additional funds to acquire diesel. Can you shed some light on that? And yeah, those will be the questions for the board at this point, and then we will move on to the section for the executive management. Thank you.
Thank you, Sekonati. As the Eskom board, we will always shy away from becoming some extended spokesperson arm of government. And so the matter of the focus on the work of cabinet at an appropriate time, the various organs of government will be also doing their own briefings with regard to how we work together in NECOM. And so I would encourage that we let the NECOM colleagues as well as the leadership of our government respond to those comprehensively, which I believe will happen in a short space of time. In terms of the matter of diesel and our liquidity, we do have a board committee, the Investment and Finance Committee, led by Mayor Trifosa Romano, that is currently, as we speak, working through various modeling to ensure that we're able to proactively manage the funding and consumption of diesel in Eskom as we battle the challenge of keeping the lights on and ensuring that we maintain healthy or tolerant levels of load shedding stages. And so we are, from where we sit, on a positive trajectory as that committee to ensuring that the board will soon be able to approve a funding model for the diesel procurement. We've been able to look at various ways of ensuring that all those aspects that are within the control of Eskom in this procurement process are led by Eskom, and where necessary then we'll always draw upon the support. All these departments that are mentioned are part of the NECOM, so all the key challenges we face we table at NICOM, and as I've said, we've received enormous support, we've received enormous alignment, and we're comfortable that some of the challenges we may have faced previously will be mitigated as far as diesel procurement is concerned. I do believe that, Skonati, we've answered the questions you directed at myself and the board. In the unlikely event that there's any unanswered question, please do bring that to my attention. Thank you very much.
Indeed, you have, sir. Thank you for that. I will start with Lisa Stein's question. She is from News 24. It's for the executives. The plans to address the issues with the coal fleet and EAF suggest there is great scope for improvement. Eskom always gave the impression that this turnaround was top priority and treated as urgent. Has work to turn around the fleet actually been woefully inadequate? Is the NICOM plan to complete Kusile by the end of this year realistic? Will they need environmental exemptions to do that? Please provide. Sorry, I can't see the last point there. Okay, there we go. I can't say the last point there, please. Okay, please provide an update for diesel. We've just done that. André, can you answer the question? I think Lisa Stein is confusing the Kusile thing. That's unit 5 that is being addressed here. Can you help perhaps with the answers? Thank you.
Yep, that's correct, Skonati. Lisa, if I can address all 3 questions. I think we need to treat the upside opportunity for a step change in EAF with a matter of caution and a good dose of reality. The fleet, as we've said a number of times, is old. It has not been well maintained. And as we conduct our reliability maintenance program and we open up the units, we often find that there are other problematic issues that we discover, or that when we return a unit that we have a failure on another component that was not in the scope for a particular outage. This is really due to the fact that we have this poorly maintained, aged fleet. We have given this top priority, but I think it's important to emphasize that many of the components that we require to do these outages have a very long lead time, in some instances as long as 2 years. So these are not shelf items that you can purchase readily. You have to place orders with manufacturers. You have to pay. So there's a liquidity challenge, which we, with support of our Chief Financial Officer, Caleb Kassam, have been able to resolve. And then you need to plan. We have really paid a lot of attention to improving our project management of these outages. We've got a dedicated team looking at this. But regrettably, the performance of our units as they come back from these outages has not been as we would have liked or as we would have expected. And this, I think, is attributable to the fact that we sit with essentially an old fleet that is going to be difficult to restore. And of course, when it comes to analyzing these problems from a financial perspective, there is such a thing as diminishing returns. It's like an old car. At a certain point in time, the car costs you so much to maintain that it's cheaper to replace it with a newer model. And this is exactly the process that we are embarking on, to replace the units that are past their useful lives with new capacity and to enable new investment to be made to replace those units. So I don't think it's appropriate to characterize this as woefully inadequate, but I think the opportunity for us to effect a step change through maintenance alone in resolving the crisis is limited. And that is why we need additional capacity as well, which I think you will recall we've been consistently saying for at least the past 3 years. The plan to complete Kusile by the end of the year, what we're referring to is that we will get Unit 5 synchronized to the grid. Of course, then there are various tests that need to be carried out before the unit can be declared fit for commercial operation and formally handed over to operations. We do not intend to apply for environmental exemptions for that. We will have to apply for environmental exemptions for the temporary flues that will carry the emissions from Kusile 1, 2, and 3 while we repair the existing 3 flues with the concrete windshield that Thomas referred to. When it comes to the update on work to find the funds for diesel supply, we are in constant communication with National Treasury. There's a very healthy and collaborative relationship with the officials at National Treasury, and we don't believe that there is any lack of understanding about the challenges that we face or that National Treasury faces. So we have been able to source additional funds from internally generated savings, bearing in mind that we, as I said in my introductory remarks, we are constrained from a liquidity perspective, but we also cannot afford, even if it were possible to do so from a logistics perspective, to run these open cycle gas turbines as baseload units. They were never designed for it. The costs are extraordinary, and we are not covered in terms of the tariff. So over time, we will definitely exacerbate the situation. So again, while using diesel to tide us over peak demand, which is what the plants were designed for, they are not the ultimate solution to load shedding. The ultimate solution is the utility scale addition of new generation capacity. Sikonati, while we are on the topic of the open cycle gas turbines, I may just emphasize in response to another question that the maintenance protocols for these open cycle gas turbines are very strictly adhered to. We have reliability maintenance that we do carry out. We do not compromise on this, and we do take units off for outages as we should, because we fully understand that these units are a critical part of protecting the grid, and therefore we really look after them very carefully. Thanks, Sikonati.
Thank you, André. Please don't go away. Fritz van Zyl wants to know what is this list of the top 6 priority power stations. And he also is asking whether Eskom has considered asking for excess renewables to be supplied to the grid instead of cutting output. Lastly, in this round, Carol Payton of News 24, she says the NECOM plan says Eskom will undertake an emergency procurement for new capacity. What technologies is Eskom considering, and when do you expect to issue this? And lastly, how will it be funded? André?
Right, thanks, Sikonati. So first of all, if you look at the 6 power stations that are our priority stations, these make an outsized contribution to load shedding, so they are receiving a lot of attention. The 6 stations are Tutuka, Duva, Majuba, Kusile, Matla, and Kendal. In particular, Tutuka is and has been for a long time a problem child for us, and we therefore are doing a lot there to try and turn that station around. We are looking, and this is also flowing over into Carol's question, at procuring immediately available electricity. We have 2 options that we are considering, and these are in the process of obtaining approval through the NECOM and the various regulatory bodies. There's a standard offer, and the standard offer is intended to mop up excess megawatts that are immediately available. We are of the view that there are about 585 megawatts immediately available from a variety of sources. we are technology agnostic when it comes to these sources. So we're not going to prescribe if it's gas generated or biomass generated in the case of sugar mills or paper mills, then that does not really concern us. And these megawatts will be put on the grid as soon as we conclude these contracts. Hopefully the first of these will be concluded in the next few weeks. The teams are working hard on finalizing that. Then we're also looking at a mechanism that we're going to call the dynamic market mechanism. And this dynamic market mechanism is intended to simulate the availability of megawatts on a day-ahead basis. We will be inviting bids to bid into the power pool on a day-ahead basis. Suppliers will be able to submit their bids, and the bids will then be awarded based on the prices offered. So this is how the electricity market works, and that we think will also be a very positive development towards the creation of a new market. Ultimately, we believe that there's about 1,000 megawatts, conservatively speaking, that we can access on a short-term basis using these mechanisms. Thanks, Sikonati.
Thank you, Andre. The next set of questions come from Terence Kramer of Engineering News. What assurance can you provide that the generation plant recovery plan is not a strategy of placing all eggs in one Eskom basket? What will become of the unbundling of Eskom while this strategy is being implemented, as the lack of an independent transmission company and system operator appears to be at heart of the current grid constraints? I will take the next one as well, Andre, from Jan Vermeulen of My Broadband. The CSIR and Intellidex have noted that there are no more slots on Eskom's grid to wheel additional capacity from the North, East, and Western Capes to Gauteng. They said adding grid capacity would be a 10-year-long multi-billion rand project. Can Eskom comment on whether this is accurate? If adding more wind power to serve the whole country isn't an option, what is Eskom and South Africa's short-term options? Andre, I believe Sekgomotso Skeepers is on leave. He may be online here to help with this last set of questions from My Broadband. Can you take a stab at the first, please? Thank you.
Thanks, Sikonati. Terence is absolutely correct. The establishment of the independent system and market operator, the ITSMO, which will be one of the functions of the National Transmission Company South Africa, which has already been incorporated as a wholly owned subsidiary of Eskom Holdings. The operationalization of that business is a critical enabler to attracting utility scale investment to the grid from a generation perspective. This is one of the key work streams at the NECOM. There is a lot of work going on to enable that and to ensure that there is a appropriate attention paid to enabling legislation. I obviously can't speak on behalf of government when it comes to legislation and when that will be submitted to Parliament for its consideration, but I can give the meeting the assurance that this is receiving very high priority from the presidency itself in order to put together enabling legislation that will allow for the operationalization of NTCSA on an expedited and urgent basis. Sekgomotso, if you can comment on existing grid access and how we can increase existing grid access by the strategic investment in transformer capacity, and also what the outlook is in terms of the latest iteration of the transmission development plan. Sekgomotso.
André, it appears we do not have Sekgomotso on the line. but Naren Singh has just raised his hand, perhaps to help. Can I ask the IT team to please unmute Naren Singh to assist with this inquiry? Thank you.
Right. I think let me rather deal with it, if you don't mind. So there are, as part of our land leasing scheme, Sigonati, we intend to make available about 31,000 hectares of Eskom land for long-term leases. That has about 11 gigawatts. We intend to make grid investments that will unlock some 17 gigawatts of capacity by 2027. And these are mainly investments in additional transformer capacity. So these are strategic debottlenecking investments on the grid in order to unlock existing capacity where we can enable grid access. This does not mean that we do not need to continue with the transmission development plan, particularly the creation of substantially more grid access to the Northern Cape, which is that part of the country that is the best endowed with solar and wind resources. So that work needs to continue, and the CSIR and Intellidex assessments are correct. This will take considerable time. Acquisition of servitudes and just the physical execution of the work will take time. But we do have grid access available, not only in Mpumalanga, where, of course, as we retire coal-fired power stations, we free up significant capacity on the grid. And this is part of what we intend to achieve with our land lease scheme. But we also have identified other parts of the country, and we will continue to drive that. So we are working very hard at ensuring that the grid is not going to be the constraint when it comes to rolling out further capacity. We need capital for that. And again, if I can preempt another question that I saw on the chat, we would wish to access a significant part of the $8.5 billion that was committed to South Africa as part of the COP26 climate negotiations to expand the grid in order to allow more renewable energy and low carbon technologies, including natural gas, to be added to the grid. Thank you.
Thank you, André. I'm going to rest a bit and see if our other colleagues can answer these questions from Kyle Cohen of News 24. Was the generation recovery plan developed with the onboarding of IPP renewable capacity in the next 24 months taken into account? What is the estimated capacity of renewable IPPs that may or will come on board during the next 24 months? What is the estimate for renewable capacity to come on board in the next 24 months to Eskom's land deals in Mpumalanga? You have just dealt, André, with that last question, but I'm going to perhaps ask Naresh Singh, who is acting for the transmission MD, to assist with those. Naresh, I hope you have been unmuted. Okay, André, please do come back and answer these questions. Thank you.
Right. Thanks, Sigonati. I thought you were going to give me a break, but you're not, so that's fine. We anticipate that there initially will be, in the first phase of our land lease program, about a 2,000 megawatt investment with more to follow. We think that as we carry on with the rollout of grid access, and in particular, if we look at bid window 5, bid window 6, that there is substantial capacity that can be made available. So bid window 5 we are aware of the 13 projects that achieved legal close on the 9th of December. We have seen issues with grid access for the remaining 6 wind projects. There is an energy storage IPP contract. This will be totaling 513 megawatts, and that is awaiting National Treasury approval. There's also a bid window 6, and that could be in the order of about 4,200 megawatts, and then bid window 7. So in total, if we look at the outlook for new capacity that we think could be added to the grid for 2024, it is about 2.2 gigawatts. 2025, we estimate, based on adding up all of the bid window capacity, the energy storage, the surplus capacity from existing IPPs, emergency power generation, or the RMI PPP, and then the gas bid window, that could total by 2025 as much as 10.4 gigawatts, a further 2.9 for bid window 7 in 2026. And then in total, if you add up all of this by 2028, that gets you to approximately 19 gigawatts. So there's a lot of capacity in the pipeline that we intend to access from a number of sources. Of course, these are commercial processes. All of these projects are subject to grid access requirements. We can't just discard the grid code. They are subject to environmental restrictions, and they have to achieve legal and financial close. So there are project risks attached to these. But I think the numbers that I've quoted clearly indicate that there is a substantial amount of capacity in the pipeline that is actively pursued, not only by Eskom, but also by private investors and through procurement run by the Independent Power Producer Office. Thank you.
Thank you, André. The question now comes from Peter Becker. He says he's from civil society organization KAA. In terms of demand reduction, has the step of turning off all geysers in government offices been considered as an easy and immediate step? I don't know if you can speak for the government here. Mr. Makwana, perhaps, have you had any engagements with the government helping in their offices by switching off the geysers? And while at it, Mr. Makwana, André, can I just ask Mr. Makwana to answer this question as well about the 20-year power purchase agreement with Powership? Has Eskom signed this, or has it considered it at all? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Skonati. As I indicated, that energy saving and demand side management is a priority for all, for Eskom, all key stakeholders, and for hopefully our consumers and the public. It will be clearer when the NECOM itself speaks to the aligned strategy that we're following. In terms of government initiatives aimed at how government can itself support this program with various initiatives in the sphere of rooftop solar. The one thing I can confirm is it is on the plan that we're working on with NECOM, and between André, Thomas and Jan, they can also speak to those exact megawatt numbers that are emerging, because we all participate in that NECOM structure. The matter of the carship continues to also be looked at, reflected upon by various key players in the shareholder space. And to the extent that an appropriate framework is found, I'm certain that it will find itself into the various work streams. Let me perhaps, while you still have me on this matter, we continue to receive lots of approaches from key players, from entrepreneurs, from a whole host of potential suppliers who, in good jest and in goodwill, approach us in terms of how we can find opportunities to add megawatts onto the grid. As I've said at the outset, the key challenge is to constantly find opportunities to add megawatts onto the grid. The country is indeed in a crisis. We continue to look at these opportunities in a manner that balances the urgency with also the tariff structure within which pricing occurs, and where we then need to get any form of dispensation in terms of where the available pricing is out of our existing regulated models, we then refer those to the broader work streams in NECOM so that we can find support in terms of either hurdle removals or facilitation of any policy frameworks that may well be necessary to help us achieve those opportunities. So in some instances, I've had entrepreneurs giving me feedback that we propose this or the other form to Eskom, but we do not receive replies quickly. It is because whilst at face value, most opportunities to add megawatts onto the grid we still need as Eskom to go through our existing frameworks of compliance and of procurement. But admittedly, we do understand that we need to fast track some of those processes in terms of urgency. But I just want to also assure the business community out there that our door is open, but we still have to go through all the necessary processes. We've learned very valuable and I'm sure very painful lessons from the ravishing legacy of capture that Eskom has gone through and the country has gone through in terms of the need to ensure that we do not overlook those painful lessons in kleptocracy, that as we clean up Eskom moving forward, as we ensure that there's solid ethics in the organization, that even in this time of crisis, we still balance urgency with solid ethics. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Makwana. André, I believe you spoke extensively about the $8.5 billion funding from COP26. I don't know if there's anything else to add to Kyle's question about whether any of that will be used to upgrade the transmission grid. I will go next to Janine Erasmus's question. She's from Business Day. Mr. Makwana said the EAF sits now at about 58%. Is this for the full fleet? What is EAF just on the coal-fired fleet? And what is the EAF recovery target for the coal fleet? Jan, can you answer these questions, please?
Thank you, Skimati. Yes, I can, but I believe it's more appropriate if Thomas, which is acting generation, deal with this question. So Thomas, if you don't mind, thanks. I don't want to take this. I can, but I'd rather like you to take it, please.
Thank you, Jan. In terms of the current coal fleet, the year-to-date is in the order of 52% EAF, so it's significantly lower than the 58 for the coal for the total generating fleet for Eskom. The intention is that we will, as we improve the EAF over the next coming months, the intention is to get closer to 60% by the end of this financial year, and that is the immediate. Clearly, with the financial year being so far already, and only 3 months left of the financial year, to really lift the year average EAF is going to be very difficult, but but we're aiming towards getting towards the, as indicated, by the 65% by the end of financial year 24, and then ultimately by striving towards 70% by the end of FY 25. Thank you.
Thank you, Thomas. Andre, can you just help me here, please, on the Cap Power ship? Am I correct that that contract is still going through the court and the regulatory system and has not yet been considered by Eskom? Can you answer that, please?
The state of play. The state of play with the Cap Power ship contract is as follows. We have not finalized any contract because this is a highly litigious environment and there are many legal risks. We have requested appropriate indemnities, and these indemnities are in the process of being considered by all sides, and as yet they have not been resolved. So I think we are now through NECOM investigating various options to see if there is in fact a way forward. If there is not, then obviously it'll be back to the drawing board, depending on what makes commercial and economic sense for South Africa overall. Thanks.
Thank you, Andre. I believe you can put a number to this one. Nadine of France 24 wants to know, to what extent has non-payment of municipalities and illegal connections contributed to Eskom's financial position? My broadband wants to know if Eskom can comment on all the legal action being brought by various organizations, and I reckon this is about load shedding. Specifically, how many resources do you anticipate all the legal action will consume, and what impact will they have on operations? Thank you.
Eskom on the implementation of the Energy Action Plan, some key aspects coming out of that. Stage 3 load shedding to be implemented in the evening until 5 o'clock tomorrow morning. Stage 4 after that. That's of course according to Eskom executives in that briefing. Talking about stage 8 load shedding, ruling that out, the CEO of Eskom saying that there is no indications at this stage that the system will reach a blackout, but also key coming out of this, Eskom chairperson Mpho Makwana saying that South Africa should expect to stage 2 to stage 3 continuously for the next 2 years, meaning that we're not out of the woods at this particular point and that recovery will be very slow. So that breaking news would then be stage 2 and 3 over the next 2 years.